Sophie Davis, 32, is a vibrant, free-spirited woman with a flair for art and a passion for creativity. She works as an independent graphic designer, often freelancing for various companies around the city. Sophie's friends describe her as someone who can light up any room with her infectious energy and sense of humor. However, beneath her bright exterior, Sophie hides a vulnerability that she rarely lets anyone see. She has always struggled with forming lasting relationships, haunted by past betrayals that have made her cautious when it comes to trust. Claire Williams, 30, is Sophie's best friend and a grounding force in her life. Working as a high-powered marketing director for a tech company, Claire is analytical, serious, and highly driven. Her sharp mind and determination have earned her success in her career, but her personal life remains complicated. Claire has always been protective of Sophie, often putting her friend's needs above her own, a pattern that sometimes strains their friendship. Despite her outward confidence, Claire is also scarred by past relationships that ended in heartbreak, making her wary of opening up fully to anyone. The story begins one chilly evening in Westbrook, where the two women meet at their favorite local cafe, The Nest, a cozy and intimate place known for its warm ambience and rustic decor. The cafe, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, has been their sanctuary for years, a place where they can relax, catch up, and forget about the stresses of their daily lives. Sophie, as usual, arrives first, her bright red scarf contrasting against the grey sky outside. She orders her usual cappuccino and settles into a corner booth, her thoughts wandering as she gazes out the window. Claire arrives shortly after, her dark coat and structured purse giving off an air of professionalism that's hard to miss. "Hey, how's it going?" Sophie greets Claire with a smile as she slides into the booth across from her. "Busy as usual," Claire replies, her eyes betraying a hint of exhaustion. "You know, deadlines never wait." Sophie chuckles. "Tell me about it. But hey, at least you're good at what you do." "Me? I'm just getting by with my designs and coffee." Claire gives Sophie a small, knowing smile. "You're too modest. You're talented, Sophie. You just need to believe in yourself more." As they chat, Sophie's mind drifts to a conversation she had earlier that day with a potential client who seemed promising. But something about the situation doesn't sit right with her. She's learned to trust her instincts, and today, her gut is telling her to be cautious. Claire notices the change in Sophie's demeanor. "What's on your mind?" Sophie hesitates before answering. "I don't know, something about this client. I feel like I'm missing something. Like they're hiding something." Claire leans back in her seat, her analytical mind already turning over the possibilities. "It could just be nerves. You've always been paranoid about your work." Sophie shrugs, unsure. "Maybe. But I just have this feeling, you know?" Their conversation is interrupted by the appearance of Sophie's ex-boyfriend, Alex, who walks into the cafe, a briefcase in hand. Sophie freezes for a moment, her eyes locking with his. Claire notices the sudden tension in the air and looks between the two of them. "Do you want me to go?" Claire asks, sensing the discomfort. "No," Sophie replies quickly, her voice tight. "It's fine. But it's not fine." Alex's sudden presence throws Sophie off balance. Their breakup had been messy, filled with lies and betrayal, and Sophie had sworn to herself she would never look back. But seeing him again after so many months stirs up old wounds, and she can't shake the feeling that something unresolved between them still lingers. Alex doesn't notice Sophie at first, too focused on his phone. But as he orders a coffee, Sophie's heart races. She looks at Claire, who raises an eyebrow but says nothing. Sophie watches Alex from across the cafe, her heart pounding in her chest. She can't believe he's here, of all places. The last time she saw him, they'd exchanged heated words before parting ways, unsure if they'd ever speak again. Their relationship had been a whirlwind, passionate and intense, but it had ended in betrayal, leaving Sophie devastated. Claire, ever the observant one, leans in and whispers, "You okay?" Sophie forces a smile, nodding. "Yeah. Just surprised, that's all." Claire's eyes narrow. "You want to talk about it?" Sophie shakes her head. "Not now. Let's just focus on something else." But the tension between Sophie and Alex is palpable. Sophie tries to ignore it, but her mind races with memories of the past. She notices Alex glance over his shoulder and catch her eye. For a brief moment, their gazes lock, and Sophie feels her breath catch in her throat. Alex, ever the confident one, smiles slightly before making his way toward her table. "Hey, Sophie," he says, his voice smooth and casual, though there's an edge of uncertainty in his tone. Sophie doesn't answer immediately. She stares at him, her mind scrambling to find the right words. It's been months since their breakup, but the scars are still fresh. Claire shifts uncomfortably in her seat, her protective instincts kicking in. "You two know each other?" she asks, her voice just loud enough to be heard but still polite. Sophie glances at Claire, silently asking for support. Claire responds with a reassuring nod. "Yeah," Sophie finally says, her voice tight. "We used to date." There's an awkward pause as the words hang in the air. Alex looks from Sophie to Claire, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer than necessary. "So, Claire, right?" Alex says, giving her a small, polite smile. "It's been a while." Claire's eyes narrow ever so slightly. "Not long enough," she mutters under her breath, but just loud enough for Sophie to hear. Sophie quickly jumps in. "What brings you here, Alex?" she asks, trying to steer the conversation away from the uncomfortable tension that's building. Alex hesitates, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Actually, I was just meeting someone, but I saw you two sitting here and thought I'd come say hi." Claire exchanges a glance with Sophie, who doesn't say anything. She's trying to keep it together, but the sight of him here, so casual and unaffected, only brings up the painful memories she's tried so hard to bury. "Right," Sophie replies, her voice forced. "Well, we're actually in the middle of something, so." Alex looks like he's about to say something else, but then he glances at his phone, his expression shifting to one of annoyance. "I gotta go. Business, you know?" With that, Alex walks away, leaving Sophie staring after him, the hurt from their past bubbling up once again. She feels a knot form in her stomach. She thought she had moved on, but seeing him again makes her question everything. Claire watches Sophie, her concern growing. "You okay?" she asks again, her tone softer now. Sophie forces a smile, though it doesn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, I'll be fine." Later that evening, Sophie and Claire sit in their apartment, sipping wine. The conversation has shifted from Sophie's uncomfortable encounter with Alex to more casual topics, but the tension still lingers in the air. Claire, sensing that Sophie isn't being entirely honest with her, speaks up. "You know, you don't have to keep pretending with me, right? If something's bothering you, I'm here." Sophie takes a deep breath, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. "It's just, seeing him again, it brought back so many memories. I thought I was over it, but maybe I'm not." Claire leans forward, her face serious. "Sophie, you don't owe him anything. Whatever happened between you two, it's in the past. You've moved on. You're better off without him." Sophie nods but remains silent. She knows Claire is right. Alex had hurt her in ways she hadn't fully realized until now. But the question still lingers in her mind: why did he show up tonight? Was it just a coincidence? As the evening continues, Sophie can't shake the feeling that something more is going on, something that Alex is hiding. She looks over at Claire, who seems deep in thought. "Do you think he came back for a reason?" Sophie asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Claire doesn't respond immediately. She's calculating, weighing her words carefully. Maybe. Or maybe he just couldn't resist stirring things up again. Sophie feels a chill run down her spine. She's beginning to suspect that Alex's appearance wasn't just a random encounter. And she can't help but wonder if it's connected to the mysterious client she met earlier in the day. Could they be linked? The next day, Sophie receives an unexpected message from Alex. Her heart skips a beat as she reads his words: "I need to talk. Meet me at the usual place." Sophie hesitates. It's been a while since she last heard from him, and the unresolved tension from their last meeting still lingers in her mind. But despite the wariness in her chest, she feels an undeniable pull to know what he wants. "I think he's playing games," Claire says as she watches Sophie read the message. "You don't owe him anything, you know. Don't get sucked into his drama again." Sophie nods, though the uncertainty in her eyes betrays her calm exterior. She hasn't had closure with Alex, and that's something that continues to haunt her. But Claire's words echo in her mind. She doesn't want to fall back into old patterns. Still, she agrees to meet him. The usual place is a small cafe on the outskirts of town, an old haunt where they spent many afternoons together in the past. Sophie hasn't been there in months. As she walks to the cafe, Sophie's mind races. Why now? What does Alex want? Her thoughts swirl around the possibility that maybe he's changed, maybe he wants to apologize. But deep down, she knows better. Alex never was one to admit fault. When she arrives, she spots him sitting at a corner table, a cup of coffee in front of him. He looks up as she walks in, and their eyes meet. There's an awkward pause, but then he waves her over. "Thanks for coming," Alex says, his voice soft but tense. He doesn't seem quite as confident as he did the other day. Sophie sits down, trying to keep her emotions in check. "What do you want, Alex?" He leans back in his chair, his hands wrapped around the coffee cup. "I need to explain some things," he says, his voice uncertain. About what happened. About why I left." Sophie's breath catches. She hadn't expected him to bring it up this soon. She'd been hoping to avoid the past for just a little longer. "I didn't just leave, Sophie," Alex continues, his eyes dark with regret. "I made a huge mistake, and I know it. But there's more to it. There's something I didn't tell you." Sophie's mind races, and she can feel the tension in her shoulders. "What are you talking about?" Alex hesitates. "I wasn't just falling out of love with you. I was protecting you from something I should have told you sooner." Sophie leans forward, her heart pounding. "What do you mean? What were you protecting me from?" Alex takes a deep breath, then looks her in the eyes. "I was involved in something I shouldn't have been. A business deal, something I got tangled up in without realizing the consequences. And when things started to go south, I realized it was too late to get out. I was afraid that if you knew, you'd get hurt, too." Sophie sits back in her chair, stunned. She hadn't expected this, not at all. "You kept this from me all this time?" Alex's gaze drops to the table, ashamed. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but I know now I wasn't. I should have told you everything, no matter how dangerous it was. But I didn't want you involved in that world." Sophie's mind is reeling. The weight of his words settles on her, and for a moment, she feels like she's drowning. "So, everything, our breakup, the distance, was all because of this? Because of some business deal?" Alex nods, looking pained. "Yes. But I realized too late that I hurt you more than I could ever imagine. And I can't undo what I did." Sophie's eyes well up, and she struggles to keep her composure. The emotional toll of the past few months hits her all at once. "You could have told me sooner. You could have trusted me." Alex's voice cracks as he says, "I know. And I'm sorry." The room falls silent. Sophie's thoughts race, but she can't find the right words to say. Everything feels like a blur, the betrayal, the pain, the unanswered questions. Alex's revelation has thrown her off balance, but part of her still wants to believe him. But then, as if on cue, her phone buzzes. She looks down at the screen. It's a message from Claire. "Are you okay? Call me when you can." Sophie's heart swells with gratitude for her best friend's unwavering support. She takes a deep breath and looks back at Alex. "I need some time to process this," Sophie says, her voice steady but distant. "I can't just forgive you because you're finally telling me the truth. It's too late for that." Alex nods slowly, understanding the weight of her words. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I wanted you to know everything." Sophie stands up, her resolve growing. "I'm done with this, Alex. I need to move on. For my own peace." Alex watches her leave, his expression a mixture of regret and sorrow. Sophie doesn't look back. She knows she's made the right decision. The following days are a blur for Sophie. She feels emotionally drained, caught between the lingering pain of her past with Alex and the hope for a fresh start. As much as she tries to distance herself from the past, it's impossible not to replay the conversation over and over in her mind. The weight of his words, his apology, it all lingers like a shadow, threatening to pull her back in. But Sophie is determined to move forward. Claire notices the change in Sophie. Her friend seems more distant, as if a part of her is still trying to find a sense of peace amidst the chaos. She knows Sophie needs time, but she can also see that Sophie is slowly closing herself off. One afternoon, Claire invites Sophie to a quiet spot by the lake, a peaceful refuge where they used to go when they were younger. It's a place that's always helped them both find clarity. Sophie agrees, needing the space to clear her mind. They sit in silence for a while, the sun dipping low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the water. Finally, Claire breaks the silence. "So, what's going on in that head of yours?" Claire asks gently, her eyes soft with concern. "You've been distant lately. I can tell you're still thinking about him." Sophie takes a deep breath, the weight of her emotions heavy in her chest. She hasn't really talked about Alex with Claire since the confrontation at the cafe. "I don't know what to feel," Sophie admits, her voice quiet. "Part of me wants to believe him. Part of me wants to understand. But then, I think about everything that happened, how he just walked away without even trying to explain. And I feel so betrayed." Claire reaches over and takes Sophie's hand, offering the comfort she's always given. "He doesn't deserve you, Sophie. And you can't let his mess affect your life any longer." Sophie smiles faintly, grateful for her friend's unwavering support. "I know. It's just hard to let go of someone who meant so much to me." Claire nods. "I get it. But you're strong. You've always been. And you've got me, you know that." Sophie's heart warms at the words. She knows that Claire is right. She's been through so much, and now, more than ever, she needs to focus on herself. The days that follow are filled with moments of healing and self-reflection. Sophie immerses herself in her work, reconnects with old friends, and focuses on things that bring her joy, things that have always been there, waiting for her to rediscover them. One evening, while out with Claire at a new cafe they've been meaning to try, Sophie has a realization. She looks across the table at her best friend and smiles, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. "I think I'm finally starting to let go," Sophie says, her voice steady. "I'm not going to let Alex control my life anymore. I deserve better than that." Claire grins, proud of her friend. "That's the spirit. You're going to be okay, Sophie. You always were." And for the first time in a long while, Sophie believes her. She knows the road ahead won't always be easy, but she's ready to face it, stronger and more certain of herself than ever before. As Sophie walks out of the cafe with Claire, the weight of the past lifts from her shoulders. She's no longer trapped in the shadows of what was. Instead, she's walking into a new chapter of her life, one where she's in control, and where her happiness comes first.